Hi, first graders. I'm so excited to be back with you today to continue our lesson. But before we begin, I have something I want to show you. I found something yesterday at my house that I think you'll be excited about. Are you ready? Here it comes. Yes, look, I found a little too-tall. I was so excited. So just so you know, she's going to be joining our lesson today, and you'll see her again at the end. So I'm going to go ahead and get started by sharing my screen, and then we'll start our lesson. All right, here we go. Welcome to our first grade reading lesson. Let's begin by reviewing our learning target. Our learning target is, I can identify the theme of a fiction story. And there you see our character from the beginning and middle of our story yesterday, Little Too Tall. So let's revisit what it means when we say theme. When we read a fiction story, the theme is the message or the lesson the author wants us to learn from the story. Some common themes we talked about yesterday were honesty, bravery, responsibility, and kindness. Or we said that theme could be shared in a small phrase or sentence, such as being yourself, never giving up, or doing the right thing. So when we read fiction stories, we can learn lessons about all those themes and some others. How do we identify theme? Well, as readers, we have to identify the important events in the beginning, middle, and end of the story. We need to think about how the characters in the story act and how they feel. And then after reading, when we get to the end of a story, we stop and ask ourselves, how did the character change throughout the story? So going back to those actions and feelings, how did the character change? What did they act like in the beginning? What did they feel like? And how did those actions or feelings change through the middle and then by the end of the story? And then the most important question to stop and ask is, what did the character learn? Because when the character learns a lesson in the story, we can learn the same lesson for our own life. So let's review the beginning of our story, Little Too Tall. The important event we decided yesterday was Parrot, Monkey, and Hippo would not be friends with Little Too Tall because she did not look like them and couldn't do the things they could do. And you can see in this illustration from the story how Little Too Tall felt based upon how those three animals acted. Parrot, Monkey, and Hippo acted unkind and unfriendly, and that made Little Too Tall feel lonely and sad. Now let's review the middle of the story that we read yesterday. In the middle of the story, we met two new characters, Zebra and Antelope, and you can see them there in the illustration. And the important event in the middle of the story was that Little Too Tall used her big eyes, long neck, and tall legs to spot the hungry lion hiding in the tall grass, and then ran to warn Zebra and Antelope to run away. During that important event, Little Too Tall felt worried about the lion, and she acted in a helpful and caring way when she warned Zebra and Antelope. So now today, we need to read the end of our story. As we read, we're going to think about what is the important event that happened in the story at the end, and how did our characters act and feel. So let's go to our story. So here's the end of the middle. That's when Little Too Tall warned Zebra and Antelope, and then all three ran to safety. So now let's hear the end of the story. "You saved us from lion," said Zebra. "Please stay with us." "Don't you think I am a funny-looking bird?" said Little Too Tall. "My eyes are too big. My neck is too long. My legs are too tall." "Not at all," said Antelope. "With your big eyes, your long neck, and your tall legs, you are just the right size." "You can see Lion when he hides in the grass," said Antelope. "We like you just the way you are," said Zebra. "You do?" asked Little Too Tall. "Then I will stay." "We can all be friends," said Antelope and Zebra. Little Too Tall laughed a happy laugh and hopped some happy hops. All right, so that's the end of our story. So, as good readers who are focusing on identifying theme, let's think about the important event and how our characters acted and felt during the end of our story. So, I'm going to share my thoughts with you. I think the important event at the end of the story was that Zebra and Antelope tell Little Too Tall that they like her just the way she is, because her big eyes, long neck, and tall legs help save them from the hungry lion. So, how did our characters act and feel? Well, Zebra and Antelope felt very thankful, and they spoke kindly to Little Too Tall. And that made Little Too Tall feel accepted, proud of how she looked, and happy to have friends. So now let's think about, how did Little Too Tall change from the beginning to the middle to the end of the story? Because remember, at the end is when we can stop and ask ourselves, how did the character change and what lesson did the character learn? Which will help us identify our theme. So again, we're going to ask, how did Little Too Tall change and what did she learn? So the first thing I did was I put some illustrations at the top of this page that really helped me to think about the beginning, middle, and end. That first illustration reminds me that in the beginning, Little Too Tall felt sad and lonely. And I think in the beginning of the story, she learned that sometimes others can say mean things to us when we look different or when we can't do the things they can do. And that would make us sad too. In the middle of the story, the illustration reminds me that Little Too Tall felt worried and concerned about the lion. And in the middle of the story, she learned that her big eyes, long neck, and tall legs were useful. That means helpful, because they were helpful in spotting and escaping from danger in the tall grass. So from the beginning of the story, she changed a little bit because she felt sad about how she looked different. But in the middle of the story, she learned that the things that were different about her, that the other animals had said mean things about, were really useful things that helped her escape danger and helped Zebra and Antelope. And then I love the illustration at the end where she is hopping a happy hop, and look at her face. You can tell she's so happy. Little Too Tall felt proud of herself at the end of the story and very happy. And what she learned at the end of the story was to like how she looked, even if it was different from others. And she learned that true friends like us just the way we are. So now my thoughts on theme. What lesson can we learn from this story? Well, I think the lesson we can learn is that we all have differences, but our differences are what make us special. So even though Little Too Tall couldn't fly like the other bird, couldn't climb trees like the monkey, and couldn't swim in the water like the hippo, What made her different from them is what made her special. And we all have differences. We all don't look alike. We all can't do the same things. But what we look like and what we can do is what makes us special, because it's who we are. So your reading response for tonight is to first reread the story, Little Too Tall. You can read it by yourself, you can read it out loud to somebody, or you can listen to someone read it to you. And then what I want you to do is share and discuss your thoughts on theme with someone at home. So think about, what did Little Too Tall learn in the story? How did she change? How did her feelings change? And what lesson can you learn from this story that you can use in your own life? So here we are back again. Little Too Tall and I both enjoyed our lesson with you today. Now, the good news is I'm going to see you again next week, and we're going to continue working on theme with some other fiction stories. So in the meantime, I want you to remember that you are special. You look just the way you're supposed to look. You're the right size, you're the right shape. I want you to also remember to stay safe, be well, and remember that we all love you and miss you, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.